Today, I'm so excited. I have my very first guest, and I couldn't have picked a better one. He's an experiential event leader out of Philadelphia. He's worked with brands like AWS and Delta. His LinkedIn headline describes him as a creative person who became incredibly operationally dangerous. And the moment that I read that, I just knew we had to talk. Matthew Barney, welcome to the Experiential Strategist.
Thank you, Jenny. I have to be honest with you. I excited isn't the right word. I woke up this morning and I was like, it's podcast day. Here we go. I jumped out of bed. I forgot I didn't even have my coffee. I'm like, wait, dude, you didn't have coffee yet. You gotta slow your roll here a little.
Well, I'm caffeinated up for both of us, so
Perfect.
it might just be me having to hush down because I'm just buzz. But actually, I know that's not true because we have chatted a couple times now, and your story is fascinating, and I would love it. You can start with your headline, the creative person, or you can just tell me a little bit about your backstory just to get us started.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I want to take a different approach with my backstory because I did put a lot of time and effort into what we're going to talk about, and that was just it made me so happy. Instead of jumping into like a list of a resume or here's all the corporate stuff I've done or here's all the career stuff I've done, I'm gonna go this way. Who I am. First of all, we can't unpack it all today. We would need a bottle of tequila and a campfire to go there, Jenny. We'd have to get down. We'd have to get down.
The blue one that you go ding at the top every time I hear a fact about you, I'll just ding the top.
Yeah, done.
Okay. It's
Done.
on.
But I'm a builder. I'm curious and I'm a jumper. And that's really wraps me up in a nice little package. When I say I'm a builder, it's because I've always been drawn to creating things. I've always been drawn to people that are creating things. I've always been drawn to communities that do well, that are successful. Sometimes it's an idea, sometimes it's a business, but taking something from concept to reality, or something from a blank canvas to a beautiful piece of what I call art. And art isn't just something you hang on your wall. I'm curious because again, I'm fascinated by people and experiences. And most of the interesting things that I've done from life have started from just pure curiosity. I'm Mr. Rabbit Hole. The World Wide Web is a wonderful thing. Sometimes at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep, but it just gives so much information, and there's so many different ways to dive into a topic and learn about people. Gary Vee, for example, I'm fascinated by him. We talked about him several times now. Fascinated by him. And so to have the ability to go down that rabbit hole and get curious about him and learn from him, it's a great gift. And then I think my favorite one is I'm a jumper. I like to stand on the cliff, look down and say, yeah, there's water down there. I don't know what's underneath it. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to jump anyways. I'm just going to go do it. And that has put me in some really interesting, unique situations. And all of those three put together, Jenny, that's just created a unique story. I just have a great story. Humbly so. I'm not being prideful, so forgive me, but humbly so, I think I have a really cool story.
I think you do too. I've heard maybe 1/1000th of what your story is, but it's fascinating. I do want to point out a couple things that you just said, and I feel like I'm very similar to you because I am an artist in my own way. Although I
Yeah.
can't draw to save my life, I'm an
Nope.
artist in my own way. I can create experiences that will blow you out of the water. And thank God AI, now I can tell it, hey, give me a kind of an example of what's going on in my brain so I can show somebody else. And then your risk taking is what makes you a great entrepreneur, I think.
Thank
And
you.
that's how you land these great, amazing clients like AWS and Delta. So do you want to go into a little bit more of your story and how you got where you are?
Sure. Ding ding. We'll start with the first tequila shot. We'll go down. Um, this is one of again. My filter for doing stuff is this going to make a cool story one day? And if the answer is yes, then we go. How I got doing events, is that proper English? How I got introduced to events is a really cool story. I just got out of the Coast Guard. The transition from military life to civilian life was not easy. It was very challenging. I was selling computer hardware. Jenny, I had no idea what I was doing. I had zero idea what I was doing. I can't even remember the hardware that I was selling. It's probably obsolete now.
You just needed a job? You just needed
Oh
that
yeah,
transition job?
yep. I just needed a job. And they came to me one day and they said, "Hey, do you want to go to Seattle to the Microsoft conference and man the booth and sell the product at the booth?" And I didn't think, yeah, that sounds great. I'm going to get commissions out of this. It's going to boost my positioning in the company. I thought, no, I like Pearl Jam, love Soundgarden, I like coffee. Starbucks is there. Yeah, I'll go to Seattle. Sure, why not? And so I got there. My first ever conference or convention that I ever attended. And I ended up running into the woman that was the producer for the event, running the show. And I said, "Wait a minute, this is your job? This is what you do? You just put on these big conferences and conventions?" She's like, "Yeah." And I thought, why didn't anybody tell me this in school? Where was this, 6 years ago? I still would have went to the military because I loved it, and I still would have served in the Coast Guard because I loved it. But I just, again, true to form, was like, I'm in. Where do I sign up? So I got her contact information, and I, at the time, was living in Buffalo, New York. I got back to Buffalo and just started researching her and what the event production world even was. And so finally, after about a month, I emailed her and I said, "Hey, I have a one-way ticket to Seattle. I'm going to come work with you." And she's like, "Excuse me?" she was like, "Okay, maybe we should talk a little first." I'm like, "It's too late. I already bought the ticket. I'm on the way. I have an apartment. I signed a lease." I didn't even see it. I just signed the lease, and off I went. We chatted, and she was very open to the idea of working together, and off we went. And that started my event production career. I didn't know anything, but the cool part of the story, Jenny, was I was kind of a natural. I just jumped in. I was doing this. I was managing logistics. Budget was no problem. I never needed much direction. And then I just fell in love, and I just took it. And all these years later, here I am still. I absolutely love event production and experiential. And just as well as I do, you either love it or you don't. There's no in between.
And you're either good at it or you don't belong in the industry. You
Oh,
can handle stress,
yes.
pivot, and last minute, absolutely. So that is an amazing story. I love that you just, worked your way into a job, and you say in your LinkedIn that you are operationally dangerous. And so
Yes.
when you started, were you creative or logistics? Which were you better at when you first started at this job 15 years ago?
Great question. And we chatted about this too. Unfortunately, we'll have to do 17 more podcasts, Jenny. Let's just confirm it now, because the audience won't really hear what we've shared a lot, but the audience doesn't know that. The answer is I was logistically good. And I think that came from discipline instilled upon me through military service. I was all the I's were dotted, all the T's were crossed, because what I did in the Coast Guard was heavy weather search and rescue. And you had to be disciplined. You had to be on it. You had to make sure every I was dotted, T was crossed, because if you didn't, literally lives were at stake. And so I learned that operationally, logistic, dangerous. I got to remember my own tagline: operationally dangerous through military service. It's been over the course of the last several years, Jenny, where, in full disclosure, going to therapy, getting a life coach, becoming my own life coach, wanting to help people, that I discovered that I am a creative person. I just haven't let them out yet. And so over the last handful of years, I've slowly let that person out. And it's just been like almost a sense of relief, if that makes sense, to be like, "Oh, yeah, here's Matthew. Where you been all this time, dude? Come on in. Be yourself. Fly your freak flag, as some people say." And that's where things really started catching fire for me. Having, all these years of logistical excellence and production excellence, letting this creative person out of the door and allowing them just to combine with each other. It's been really rewarding, honestly, and just really self-fulfilling. And it just, happiness isn't even a word that can begin to cover it.
That's so fascinating to me because you're explaining to me that you kind of came into who you truly were. But when you tell me the story of your events and, these, I call them the special sauce, the things that you gatekeep, the special things that you were sharing with me that you do in your events, those were beyond what a creative person would do. These are genius creativity level moves. And it's so interesting that you were already doing the thing that you really were, but it just took you realizing who you really were to align with what you were also doing. So I find that pretty fascinating that you came into that. So the second course in my certification is called the Competitive Edge. And I teach about how people need to focus on their niche, what they're good at, whether it's creativity, marketing, or logistics, and really honing that in. And so that sounds like you did that exact thing on your own and you figured that out. So I have to move on to the next question here because I have so many things I want to ask you. And you've worked with these major brands like AWS, Delta, some of the biggest brands in the world. And so what level of that experiential work what does it teach you that smaller scale work cannot do? What changes when the stakes are so high? You're reporting to Delta, AWS, and it's not just the little business down the street.
That's a really great question. And again, in doing my homework prepping for this, I don't know if I came up with an answer because sometimes I think the smaller things are way more difficult. I really do. I think the smaller the scale, the more challenges that arise. So doing those big, the AWS, the Microsoft, the Nike leadership retreat stuff, it's just something that I don't know if I like the pressure. I don't know if I like the big spotlight. I don't know if I like the stress. I probably do. I had a full head of hair when I started producing events, so there's an indication of the stress level. I just am naturally more comfortable. The bigger the project, the bigger the limelight, the more comfortable I become. These smaller activations, if you will, or these smaller events, or these smaller things that we put on seem to just take on a different life than the bigger ones, if that makes sense. It's a different personality, it's a different creature. The process is all still pretty much the same, but it just moves and has its own personality is the best word I can come up with.
So you've shared with me a little bit about the personalities of some of your events. Are you willing to share some of your special sauce that I call them? There was one in particular in Seattle that I absolutely loved that story about the gift. And will you share some of these special things that you do, whether it's a big scale event or a small scale that you do that really, we talk about emotion a lot, and I teach about emotion, how it's so key in triggering behavior in people. Would you share a little bit about maybe one of your stories of how you do that?
Yeah, I would love to. And yes, I was gatekeeping with you a little bit, but I'll lift the hood a little bit and I'll show you the engine. I discovered this by accident. I did a activation for some AWS execs after one of our events. What event? It was Global Partner Summit. True to who I am, I wanted to find a space that was cool, that was creative, that was different. I wanted to interrupt or even disrupt the norm. I wanted to do something different, which is another, interrupter and disruptor is another term that I think I could use to describe myself as I continue to go through my learning process about who I am as a person. But I really wanted to disrupt and do something different and interrupt. So I found an art gallery in Pike Place Market in Seattle. Beautiful venue. It gives me goosebumps just talking about it. and the art gallery turned out to be owned by Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. And I was like, oh, really? This is cool. This is super cool. So I reached out to Chris Adams, who, by the way, if you're ever looking for someone to work with at a venue in Seattle, Chris Adams is amazing. I'll even share his contact information with everybody after this, but he ended up being just amazing to work with. The interesting part that really concerned me about the art gallery, Jenny, was the current installation or the current showing of art was all done by incarcerated individuals, so inmates. And I was like, ooh, that's a little bold, dude. Are you sure you want to do, talking to myself, are you sure you want to do that? Yep, we're jumping. Let's go. When the people walked in, the cool, this is what I love about doing experiential. Their faces dropped. They looked around. You could see like just the awe. And it went over so well. So well. I think 4 or 5 people, including myself, bought art off the wall that night. Chris was amazing. He shipped it out to everybody. He's like, yep, no problem. I got you. His hospitality was off the charts. But the cool little, and I've done this a couple times now. The cool little thing that I did was, and I have it over here amongst my other 1,000 books that I have. He took while on tour, he took a Polaroid of the crowd, or took a selfie, before selfies were selfies, he took Polaroid selfies. Or he took Polaroids backstage, and he put them all into a book. And I was like, ooh. I said, Chris, can you get me that book? He's like, yeah, I can. Absolutely. So I'm like, cool, give me, I think it was 30 of these books. And that's all I said. He went above and beyond and had Mike sign every book for us as well. And when I gave those books out, people lost their minds. They really lost it. They went bananas over it, which was a really cool reaction to see. What was special about it, and the feedback I got, and I kind of already knew this, but I did receive the feedback, the external feedback, or the external, what's the word I want to use? Validation. The external validation that I received was, no one's done this. It's not AWS. There's no logo. There's no branding. But I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to remember this forever. And I did it another time, Jenny, with another activation at a restaurant in San Francisco. What is the name of I'm blanking on the name of the restaurant. It'll come to me in a minute. But the chef, James Beard, winning a chef, Michelin-rated restaurant, the chef had a cookbook. And I was like, ooh, can we get a cookbook for all the attendees and give it to them? Absolutely, done. And again, chef signed the book, and I gave the book out to people. And again, the reaction was just, the reaction was amazing. It was just really, really special to have that reaction. And again, the feedback was, I had an AWS exec call me, and she said, I look at that book every day, and I think about that event, but I think about you. And I was like, ooh. First of all, humble, thank you. That's amazing. That was, not necessarily my intention whatsoever, but it just started this idea of swag. I don't need another water bottle. I don't need more swag. I don't need another puffy vest. Give me something that I'm going to remember. And that's where the idea kind of generated from, just to keep doing that. And it works. I got to tell you, it works.
I love that because it's intentional design, and I call it strategic experience design. A typical planner for a conference or a brand activation, you get a timeline, a list of to-dos. You maybe look at your budget for the last time and think, well, what do I switch this time? If you look at it as, what can I do intentionally that's going to make the most impact? As opposed to, well, we got to have some swag. What are we going to throw in there? It makes the difference of night and day, whether they're going to remember not just the event, who threw the event, the purpose of the event, the why of the event, the intention of the event. Just locking in that memory right there, that is so key. And I call it anchoring and activation. That's what I call it in my blueprint. So that it's locked in the memory.
I love that. Can I steal that from you?
Well, I mean, it's copywritten in my workbook here, so you can't steal it, but you can use it all over town.
All right, fair enough. But that goes back to, Jenny, what I was talking about earlier in our conversation about the interruption or the disruption. It was different. It was a very small interruption or disruption. And, had it gone sideways or had it not worked out I didn't even hope it worked out anyways. If it had just not landed properly, let's say that, it was not a big deal because it wasn't a huge interruption. It was just a small disruption, but ended up having tremendous ROI, if you want to call it ROI, or ended up having a tremendous back-end experience to it.
Absolutely. I want to shift gears for a second. So we met on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things is posting provocative posts on LinkedIn that get people to respond to me. And I asked you how you prove event success. And you kind of stopped, hold on, and that made you come to my profile and figure out who is this girl sitting on this pink couch that's saying these
who's this fashionista on a pink couch? I need to talk to her. Again, jump. Let's curiosity. Let's get curious and jump. Let's figure it out.
Absolutely. So before that moment, had you truly ever thought of how do I prove event success? Had you ever really had a framework or a process, or how did you do that?
That's an interesting topic, and a little self-plug for myself. I'm speaking on this next week in New York. What are you doing next Wednesday? Come to New York. I'm on a panel. But we're talking about how to build an event with, to show ROI. And I think it's a really hot topic right now. I know it's a hot topic right now. Previously, you and I have been doing this for a very long time. Previous proof of concept for an event or previous proof of ROI in an event was how many people showed up. You said 500. Did 500 show? And that was kind of it for the long time, right? But now, especially at the corporate level, you're talking, what was generated for pipeline, what MQLs were turned to SQLs, marketing qualified lead, did they turn to sales qualified lead, SQL, MQL to SQL. That's a big one right now. And it's a little bit of a beast, because then as event production or experiential production folks, again, we were like, all right, we'll build it, we'll set it up, we'll get the invites out, and we'll tell you how many people showed up. If we hit our goal, we were good. Now it's like, okay, what was the level of sales generated? What was the level of interaction that was generated? Because we have technology to measure it. How many people went to the breakout session? Well, there was, we had seating for 75, but 25 showed up. Ooh, that's data. That's input. That's an ROI metric. And I think the biggest thing is now we are definitely evolving as experiential producers, because we have to have the ability to put on the hat to talk at the corporate level or the C-level, to say, based on the event, X amount of dollars was generated in revenue. And that's the big one. And putting on that hat, I think, is challenging for a lot of us, because that means, having the ability to talk about an MQL to an SQL, which again is marketing qualified lead to sales qualified lead. Did that lead turn into dollars? And that, in my opinion, or my thinking, Jenny, currently is, now we're almost becoming salespeople, because we have to go to the sales team post-event and say, hey, here's all your leads, or you tell me, you scan the leads, you got how many leads? Okay, what is the process for follow-up? Am I responsible for giving you a platform for follow-up, or is that your sales manager? Who owns that? And I think there's going to have to be a lot of conversation going forward about that. And That's where I think we have the opportunity to learn as experiential producers and event producers to have a seat at that table.
Absolutely. One of the things I've found over the last year, as I've been doing research, I've talked to hundreds of planners, and one of the things is there's that you come into the industry, you're an event planner, you're in charge of logistics. At what moment did everyone decide that you're now in charge of ROI and what the sales team is doing? And the sad thing is that if you don't know what the sales team is doing, if you don't know how to prove success, you're not going to make six figures in this industry. You're not going to move up into a Jack Morton, a Wasserman, or into one of these experiential roles or work with AWS or any of that. And so this is my thing that I'm just so passionate about and that I am trying to spend the rest of my life doing, and that is teaching people how you go from that logistics order taking role into I'm a strategist. I earn a seat at this table. I can show you how an event is successful every single time. And so that's something I am so passionate about, because so many people are stuck at the bottom and they don't understand. And it's not that they're sitting in the back smoking a cigarette saying, well, that's not my job. They're not doing that. They just, no one's taught them, because there's no framework. There's no process. But there is now, because I built one. So we're all good. We're all covered in that area, so we can all now prove success and all be strategists if we want to. But it's truly the history of event production and going from that level to, we're just logistically putting this together. Like for me, myself, I got to that next level through creativity. I got there because I threw out the most creative ideas in the room. And so everyone thought, oh, she's not just an order taker. She has ideas. What's that all about? And then once I actually have an MBA in marketing, and I don't think you need to go spend a ton of money and earn an MBA to move up in this industry. I feel like all you need to do is be boots on the ground, logistics, learn what it feels like to plan an event, to have things go wrong, to have to pivot last minute, to have to turn a seated thing into a cocktail standing thing because your client came in and said, wait, I changed my mind. You have to go through all of the boot camp of event planning. And then, to earn your seat at the table, you need to learn the language to be able to speak in ROI terms and C-suite terms.
100%. And I agree with you. I agree with you all the way. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership. Does it help? 100%. But all the learning came from, to your point, boots on the ground. Making a mistake and being like, ooh, that was a mistake, lesson learned, fix it quick, and then move on. You've got to get in the mix. You've got to, in the spirit of Gary Vee, you've got to fuck it up a couple times, fix it, do it again, fix it again, and then just keep screwing it up and fixing it. And that's where the real empowerment comes from. That's where the real knowledge comes from.
Absolutely. And I love that you popped out Gary Vee, because he, so inspirational. He's on my feed every day.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to talk about one of your specific events that you designed, and you already shared the emotional experience of the swag, but do you have another one that you actually designed an emotional experience on purpose and then proved the results at the end? Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, I'm going to stay with my most recent adventures at AWS. Obviously, AWS is a monster of a company. I think they're, I don't know, top. I don't know the statistics on it, but top one or two companies out there now. I don't know, so don't quote me on any of that. But certainly those events, Global Partner Summit was definitely one. That was inviting all the partners of AWS to one convention, one conference. It was in Seattle, and that was heavily involved, proving ROI. To our point, it wasn't just, hey, we need 1,500 partners to attend this conference. It was, who are the right people that need to be there? What level of a partner are there? What level of revenue are they generating? Capturing those individuals' information once they arrive on site, kind of through technology, following them around the convention conference for 3 days, and then capturing all that information, getting it to the sales team as quickly as possible for follow-up. And there was conversations involved, Jenny, from my perspective on, what is the follow-up? What is the plan for follow-up? Is that on me for ensuring the sales team follows up properly, or the partner development PDMs, partner development marketers, are they following up in a proper way, giving them some structure on the purpose of the event and why they came, and then giving them some information for the follow-up so they could do it properly and generate the revenue.
That's actually really, really interesting, because a lot of planners, including myself in the past, decide to measure results after the fact.
Yeah.
And what you just stated was one of the most important things is you start before you even start planning. And you ask that question, who do we want in the room? Because I'll tell you about an event that I did year after year. I did it 3 years in a row, and first year we had about 350 registrants. The next year was 500. The next year was 750. And everyone thought, wow, it was a beautiful event. Obviously, we grew in attendance, but in my world, attendance is a head count. It doesn't matter. Because it matters, number one, who is that? Is that actually your client, or are you just providing them, a good time? And then after these events, which everyone was telling me these are so successful, I couldn't figure out how. I had no idea how to say, well, it was successful because of this. Because to me, a head count is not success, that's output of something. And so I actually had sponsors after every single year say, we didn't get anything out of it. We're not coming back next year. So I'm sorry, but that is an unsuccessful event to me. That is not success. And so after that point, I looked back and I thought, before the event, I am going to clearly communicate what success looks like from the beginning and get everybody involved. Whether it's a sponsor, whether it's any of the stakeholders, that's what's going to happen. And so I actually bombed event after event when, people are, guests are saying it's phenomenal. But when sponsors are giving me, 50 grand in food and, they need to be getting, they're important, not the guest having a good time. So clearly explaining expectations from the beginning, I think, is key. And then, like you said, planning beforehand. The planning before the planning is what I call it.
Yeah. And now that you frame it that way, Jenny, or now that you share your story, and by the way, I've been there, done that too, bombed, sponsors like, hey, this was awful, we're not coming back. Been there, done that. Not a great conversation. But the thought you helped me generate was, we did a lot of pre-work before we started logistics with the sales team to say, hey, here's the criteria for who gets in, because it was an invite-only event. Here's the criteria for who gets invited. If they don't fit, we cannot invite them. Because it had impact on budget, we had impact on, fire marshal regulations with the amount of people in the building. I'm like, look it, we can't go over this. We've got to really stick to the perfect attendee, and that's it. And so later, of course, 2 weeks out from the event, my Slack and my email was a pinball. It was a slot machine. Bing, 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 bing. Hey, so-and-so needs to be there. Hey, this customer really needs to be there. Hey, I need this person there. They do X amount of dollars revenue with us, and we cannot not invite them. And so I became the bouncer and the gatekeeper of like, nope, sorry, can't do it. We set this standard, we set this guideline 6 months ago. We're 2 weeks out. We can't allow it. I'm sorry. And that was challenging to have those conversations. And several of them did get heated. Not gonna lie, several of them did get heated, and we had to stick to our guns, because again, wasn't the target guest. I try not to say attendee anymore. I try to say guest. Wasn't the target guest, It's having an impact on F&B budget. It's having an impact on the amount of people we can have in the room. It's having an impact on our floor plan because, we're anticipating 1,500, but it's looking like $2,000. Now we've got to go back to the floor plan and adjust seating. We've got to rearrange some floor plans to add seating. So it was heated at several times, like I said.
That's a really interesting concept that kind of ties into when you're in that weird space between logistics coordinator and actually the person that can make the call and make the decisions. And I know you have a lot of conversation with C-suites, and so do I, but I was a C-suite at one point. But prior to that, I didn't feel confident enough to stake my claim and say, no, we're not doing that. This is not aligned with the event. We're not putting a mechanical bull in the corner because it has nothing to do, and yes, it's a true story. We're not doing that because it's not aligned with it. And so did a mechanical bull show up? Yes, because I didn't have the strength to say it. And so that's another thing that I teach is that you have to find your voice, and by calling yourself an experiential strategist, something that you do is you show up and you say, I'm not just your order taker here. You've hired me as an expert, and what I need to do is tell you that no, that person doesn't belong in the room because it's 225 ahead and they're doing nothing to move the business needle. So I'm sorry. And so how did you kind of gain your voice and your confidence so that you could have these conversations?
I stinking love this question. And honestly, it has nothing to do with event production. It has nothing to do with experiential production, nothing with experiential activations. I found my voice because I did a lot of self-work. And I know we've talked about this too. Again, maybe TMI, but I've gone to therapy. I've had a coach. I've had a life coach. I've done a lot of self-reflection, especially during COVID because there was nothing else to do, right? We weren't working, unfortunately. But during COVID, if there was a book on finding yourself, self-help, I picked it up and I read it. I just ingested, and I ingested probably way more than I should have, but I was fascinated with it. And so all that to say, I just learned about who I was. And that gave me the confidence to have a voice backed by years of experience, yes, and years of making mistakes, yes, but I just found out who I was as a person. And I also learned, I always had this as a talent, I guess you could say, Jenny, but learning to read a room. I didn't know I had it, but I did have it, kind of like creativity. I knew I had it, or I had it, but I didn't know I had it, or I didn't let that side of me out the door. Reading the room, I think, is a big one. You've got to know who you're speaking to. You got to know your audience. There are some C-level execs that I can say, that's dumb. We're not putting a mechanical bull in the corner. What are you thinking? And I know I can get away with it. But there are some execs where if I did that, I'd be gone. And so just learning how to read the room and who you're speaking to goes a long ways. And timing is another one too. If you're in the fire, there's a fire drill. I do use humor in fires because it's a little bit of my ability. It's my psychological way to also calm someone else down. Because if I'm a mess, they're going to be a mess, vice versa. So humor goes a long way with calming the situation down. But finding timing for that humor with a C-level exec is also pretty critical. Again, knowing your audience. And again, it's just figuring out who you are as a person. Yes, inside of an event space or inside of an experiential space, but also completely outside of that. Figure out who you are. Ask questions, get help. Go to the therapist. Figure it out,
So finding your voice, you would recommend if you were telling a planner that wants to get, or someone entry level, maybe 5 years into their career, and they want to be an experiential strategist, they want to get into brand activations, corporate events, and work with these big brands. 3 tips to get them to, find their confidence, find their voice. What would you recommend?
First of all, take your course, the one that you've created. Read your book that's coming out in September. I mean, we joke, but that's actually very true. 3 tips: learn. Just be a student and never change. I don't have it all figured out. I've gotten pretty far, but I'm still going to continue to learn and be a student. Be a student. Do do some self-reflection. Who are you? Are you putting on a corporate mask just to get a paycheck? And if you are, zero issues with, spirit of Gary Vee. Zero issues with that. Do your thing. If that's what you want to do it. Or are you putting on this corporate mask or this corporate armor when in reality you're someone totally different? Well, explore that a little bit. You don't have to be like me and jump in all the way and do it, but just give it some exploration. Give it some room to breathe. And we've talked about this a couple times now. Make mistakes. You've got to, we're not saving lives. And I have a joke. Sometimes in the heat of a moment or the heat of a fire drill, I'm like, look, we're not saving lives here. That's actually way easier. And they look at me and they say, what do you mean? I said, well, because I did it in the Coast Guard, and it's not this difficult. Why are we making this so difficult? Let's find a solution. Everybody find calm, or everybody be calm. And there's a solution there. We just don't see it yet.
It's so funny that you say that. I was doing research on, I think it was a year ago, on the most stressful careers, and we're fifth. Ours is fifth. We're not ER doctors saving lives, but it feels like it. It can feel like it in the time. And I don't think we give enough credit for people that are living on the floor. The people that are running the trade show booths, the field marketing people, even the corporate event planner that's, the 550 person holiday party that was just tossed over to them. Those people, that on-site learning is something that the sales team is never going to know. They don't know. The marketing team that's back in the office, they don't know that. And so that is such a gift to be on site, knowing what's happening, feeling that energy, seeing that, oh, that lighting made them feel that way. Oh, this works, that works. Those people need a seat at the table where they're deciding budgets, where they're making, the decisions of whether or not to even have that event versus this event. Because when you're in that moment, there's something it's not a number. It's not something that can be represented like that. But those people should have a say at the table as to how much we spend next year.
Oh, yeah.
As to, whether that event worked, whether it didn't work. Maybe they don't have the framework or the knowledge yet to say why it worked, but to have a seat at the table to contribute because they're there. I am such a proponent of getting these people at the table.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And that gave me a couple thoughts, Jenny. The first one was, you talk about being on site and having passion or having compassion for the people on site. This was not something I did purposely. It's just naturally who I am. But my first go-to on site, and I love being on site. I love seeing all this work come together and the build out. I go to the crew. I go to the production crew. They're my best friends because they're genuinely good people. They're smart. They're talented. But they're also really the fulcrum point of the entire event, because if they're in the middle of building out a stage and I don't know, maybe they're not motivated or fired up that day, guess what? Your whole event starts sliding. So I immediately go to the crew. You guys need coffee? What are you doing today? Oh, what's your name? Where are you from? Awesome job. You guys are doing great. And that resonates with them so much because I don't think a lot of people do that. They're just the crew running around in a black t-shirt, black pants, setting up the stage, and no one cares about them. But you go straight. Here's a learning opportunity for you earlier in your career, folks. Go to the crew. Make them your best friends. 100%.
They're there for 12, 16 hours sometimes. Make sure that there's a pot of coffee, water. Did they have their breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And it's so funny that, the bigger the event, the more the vendors, the more people that are behind you. And we don't throw events so that we can be like, oh, we're the star of the show. We're not that kind of people. But we are only one of just hundreds, if not thousands, sometimes an event that are just pulling this together. We're just we're the face of it. And so taking care of these people, they definitely, I have a lot of vendors that are, so grateful to work with me and want to work with me again because I make sure to take care of them. And that is so key and such a great point to bring up.
Call it hospitality, call it leadership, call it, even if you wouldn't call it being an event producer, you have to take care of your people, 1,000%. If humor is not your thing, I have to be careful because I have a loud laugh, and when I'm on site, I laugh all day long. And so I use humor as a form of my leadership and taking care of people and my version of hospitality. But if you don't have that, totally fine. Just listen. If you hear someone say, "Oh, I really like a Hershey chocolate bar," go get him a Hershey chocolate bar. Just be like, "Here, thanks for doing a great job," and then walk away. And you'll have so many raving fans. Oh, it's the secret sauce.
And you were around during COVID, and so you went through the trauma and that we all did of post-COVID people that knew how to do events, and then 2020 when we were rebuilding in 2021, it was basically all new people. At that level, people couldn't sustain a year and a half without work, and so we have a new industry now, and so it's definitely the pre-COVID, post-COVID production teams and the staff. It's a whole everyone's a new face.
Yep. 100%. And COVID was hard. You talk about not being able to go a year and a half, even 2 years without income. I ended up, here's a funny story. Here's a jumper curiosity story. I pivoted to real estate because I was living in Portland, Oregon. Real estate was still screaming hot. I'm like, I don't have many other choices. Okay, here we go. So I studied my little butt off, passed the real estate exam, and off I went. But I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I just did not like it. It was not for me. But then coming back I decided one day, I'm like, this isn't for me. I got to make a change. So, in the spirit of humor, I said to my therapist, I said, hey, I think I need to go back and do events. She's like, are you sure that's a good idea? I said, probably not, but I'm doing it anyways. And I said, if the upside of it is, you'll probably get more business from me. So I'm going back in. And you're right. I got back in the industry and it was completely different. The ROI conversation came into play a little bit, not as much as it is now, but it certainly started there a little bit. And it was fresh faces, different personalities. It was different ball game.
That's so funny. We have so many parallels. During COVID, I was running 6 social media accounts of real estate agents because I needed a side job because I had lost all my corporate clients. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to get my real estate license. So I
Are you serious?
For Colorado. Yes, I studied for the Colorado real estate license. I got to the end. And so I had these 6 clients. And my loophole working for my clients is that I hadn't signed the Colorado real estate license agreement that when I advertise on Facebook and Instagram that I have to use the fair market housing. You don't have to do that unless you are a licensed real estate agent. As a marketing person, I didn't have to follow that rule. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to lose all my clients because I'm going to have to follow that rule and I'm going to lose, all of these people. And so I ended up not taking the test and passing and doing all of that for one little caveat so I could have that loophole and I could advertise to more people.
I love it. I didn't know that. Look at, we're still learning. I love it. That's so funny.
We're innovators, but we're back. We're both back to the events industry. And I'm going to come back to your career at the intersection of creativity and strategy. And I would love for you to just give a little bit of insight to the experiential professionals in the events. Who do you think is going to be the ones who really thrive in the next 10 years?
Yep, and I really like that question too. When I was doing my homework, I've again very humbly so discovered that I'm a little bit of a unicorn because I can straddle both sides of the fence. And it doesn't always serve me well, I'll be honest with you, because if someone asks me, well, what do you do? Or, what do you want to do? I'm like, honestly, I want to work with cool people and do cool shit. But does that mean I'm logistics boss, or does that mean I'm the creative boss? What do you want me to do? Which one do you need? So it often goes flat because I can't, because people want me to choose, and I'm like, I can do both. I can do both at a very high level. So I think going forward, the people that will be successful are the people that can do both, that can be a little bit of that unicorn, and in the spirit of real estate, sell themselves in a manner that shows they can do both. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still grappling with how to sell myself in that capacity of, again, I can do logistics and floor plans and run a show, production schedules. I can do all that, but I can also give you super cool freaking creative ideas that are interruptive and disruptive to get your audience, to get your guests' attention.
I absolutely agree with that. One thing that I would push back on is the logistics. We have AI. I think AI is going to take over the run of shows and the tedious little stuff. And even though AI has, creative abilities, I can say what I want into chat and it creates something cool. I think the creatives and those that can prove event success, I think those are the ones that are really going to show up and get the real, brand jobs and the big jobs. And it's not hard. Like I said, you don't have to earn an MBA. You just have to be able to show that your event that's so creative, over the top, dripping with diamonds and all the things actually did something. And what was that thing that it did?
Yeah. I like that pushback. I'll take it. Because I think you're correct. AI scares me a little bit. It probably scares all of us a little bit, but I think it will, faster than we realize, take over the logistics piece. Honestly, it's moving fast. I've seen firsthand, especially during my time at AWS, how fast and how far along it really is. So yeah, I think the creative folks and that can prove it. I like it. I can buy into that 100%. And it takes leadership and it takes emotional intelligence to deliver what AI is going to give you. How about that? That's also going to be the key for future success.
And I would love to have another podcast with you where we just dive into the emotional intelligence and how much is needed in this industry. So I will put a pin in that, and we have to set up a date to do that.
Don't put a pin in it. Just send me the calendar invite now. I'm in. Let's go.
I love it. But let me see. So before I let you go, what are you working on right now? What are you excited about? What should people listening know all about Matthew? Give it to me in the Hot One show? Give it to me in the Hot One show without...
In full transparency and honesty, I am not working on anything at the moment. I am hell-bent on getting connected with a creative agency out of New York. Call it Invisible North. Jeff Renaud, if you're listening to this, come on, dude, let's go. I want to play with the big boys, the Jack Mortons, the MVEs, the Soho Experientials. I have the chops to do it 100%, and I'm networking like a madman right now to get the connections. Oh, that's another one, for future success, networking. It's going to become a highly valuable skill going forward. Highly. So just get out there in front of your network, meet people, shake hands, go do the action. So I'm on the hunt, Jenny. I'm on the hunt for doing big, creative, cool shit with cool people type thing. Again, the Invisible North, the Jack Mortons, the MVEs, the Soho Experientials, and there's so much more. EMC3 is another one that's high on my list of tremendous people of that organization. Daniel and Lee, I've met recently, are phenomenal people.
Well, I think that is absolutely obtainable, especially from your resume and me chatting through the way that you build these events, and all of your events on your resume stack sounds like you're very much in line with that. Tell me about, you're on a panel next week in New York. Tell me about that.
Yes, in true form to my statement on get out there and network and meet people and be in the mix, face to face. I was introduced to Pulse, which is a sort of a networking series that takes place in New York City and Miami. I was invited to attend Pulse last week. I went, and I was like a kid in a candy shop. It was so fun. Just so many smart people and ideas and creative inspiration. I had a great conversation with Daniel, the owner of EMC3, and Lee, who is, oh, forgive me, I forget his title off the top of my head. I think he's North American Business Development VP. Based on those conversations, and again, just getting face to face, they said, hey, do you want to come be on our panel next week? And I'm like, yeah, I do. What are we going to talk about? ROI. Oh, guess what? There's that word again, ROI. So we're gonna do a panel and talk about how to build engaging events that show ROI.
Where's it going to be?
It is at, oh boy, you just handcuffed me right there. I can send you the information afterwards. It's at, yeah, well, I'll get you to it afterwards.
Send me the notes so that I can put it in there if people want to come and listen to you, because I would come, but I'm not in New York yet. I will be there.
I did actually I did a LinkedIn post on it this morning. So if folks want to go look at my LinkedIn profile, Matthew Barney. There's a couple of us, but I think I'm the only one bald dude on LinkedIn, so you can find me that way.
Perfect. All right, so I have one more question for you. If you could go back to the version of yourself that was just starting out in this industry, and I can picture you in my mind leaving the Coast Guard, just hopping a flight, telling Microsoft you're going to work for them. I kind of see you just told, is it Jack Morton, that you're basically going to go work for them? I see that happening. Yep. So what would you tell this person, that version of yourself 15 years ago?
Ooh, that wasn't in the homework, Jenny.
I'm sorry. You're going to have to learn to think on the spot. I know you can.
I know. No, I know. I can do that well. You might make me choke up a little bit here and get emotional. I would tell myself, you're going to be a rock star, dude. Just keep going. Just keep going. Just say yes. Keep jumping. Keep being curious. One day you're going to wake up on a podcast with Jenny, and you're going to be speaking on a panel. Just be you. Keep going. Keep jumping. And don't ever lose curiosity.
That is Matthew Barney. Go find him on LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. If what Matthew and I talked about today resonated with you at all, if you heard yourself in this conversation and you're ready to build the strategic foundation that backs up the creative instinct you already have, I want to invite you to watch the Proof Problem Masterclass. It's free, it's 30 minutes, and it's the framework that turns everything we talked about today into something you can measure, prove, and get paid for. The link is in the show notes, and I will see you in the next episode.